process as a designer really starts when I'm being sent a script. And in that case, I was sent a version of the script, not the current version we ended up with, but a couple of versions before that. And I sort of read it over, have my initial thoughts, maybe already I started to put a mood board together, just images and thoughts as I'm reading the script. Maybe I would outline the locations, make a note of them, just to see what I'm up against with, what we're dealing with in terms of practicalities. And then I had a conversation with Bryony and Martin pretty much straight away, just to get their take on it, because obviously they have been with the project for far longer than I was at that point, especially Martin. So getting their thoughts and how do they see Keli being realized. The play is challenging in a way where we shift from location to location. So at that point already we started having a conversation about what sort of theatrical language we're going to have there. Is it going to be quite realistic? Is it going to be a bit more abstract? How are we going to facilitate all of the changes in the scenes? What's going to be important for the audience to see at first, and all of those questions. Once Bryony and Martin and I have a good understanding of the direction we're taking, I would then create another model. So try to think about everything, go scene by scene, and at that point I will make a list of props, make a list of costumes. We'll start having a conversation about costumes. I'll bring some references, just starting to piece everything together into this big kind of package of information. And yeah, so working a lot with Martin and Bryony to a certain point. I believe we also had a little concept meeting where we brought something to the table, and Aoife Fraser, who's the production manager, she was like, well, yes, this is possible, this is might be a bit tricky, how would you like to do this? And we talked about materials. We brought a green book aspect quite early on, so I went and looked at different locations where National Theatre of Scotland stores previous sets, and I've looked at the kind of the stock which is available for me to use, different flats and scenic materials and fabrics. So that kind of really helped for me to think about sustainability from the ground up and design those elements into the set. We went to, for example, Reset Scenery. It stores a lot of different set pieces, scenic fabrics, props, just a lot of things. And basically what they do is after each production has ended its run, they buy those set elements from theatres across, or those set elements getting donated to Reset, and not only theatre, film as well. So we went there. So from there, I take this whole information and I just make a model and I make the design. After that, you just kind of sit down and wait for feedback in terms of, is this going to be achievable? Are we going to hit the green book? What are we going to get from all different places? So again, all the questions come back to you, and as you walk through those questions, we get to the final meeting, and that's where the design sort of, sits. And then it's the whole rehearsal process, and things change. I've never designed a show which is based around the legacy, around the mining before, so I've never been to a mine. So at some point during the design process, Martin Green and I went to the Lady Victoria colliery in Newton Grange, which is a disused mine, and it's got a Victorian part and it's got a bit more modernised part, and they've built a museum around that, and it's a fantastic place, and it's got a lot of Victorian architecture there, which is stunning, a lot of old machinery, and you can actually go down the mine. They take you in the little elevator, you go down the mine, and you're just there in the very small space, and you actually see what it feels like and what it looks like, the coal and the stone as it's been drilled, and like the tactile quality of it. It was very important for me to see that, and all of those images and photos I took, and kind of the feel of it has translated to Keli's set quite directly, I would say. Some things have changed and adapted as we started rehearsing with them. Like, for example, we had coal faces, as we call them. So it's the flats with the texture on them, on wheels. And the initial design of them was that we would travel them in and out, but they would never kind of go the full in on stage and the full out, but they would more like kind of a little waves in and out of the wings. But as we started rehearsing, Bryony and I just decided that why they always so static, and we ended up using them quite a lot. They went in quite far, they went out. So we've really kind of exceeded what I've imagined they would do. So originally all those pieces had a very sharp edge to them. It's just because being a designer, you're kind of battling with, I want so many elements and I want all of it to be nice and pretty, but the budget is only so big, so you kind of need to cut corners somewhere. So they had a raw vertical edge. So as they're traveling on the stage now, we couldn't have that. So we've added like a little pieces to them to kind of continue the rock formation and continue that little mounting. So that was addition. That was a quite big addition because there's 4 elements on stage. And one of the main elements we've used, like a technical, like a scenic element, is this material called AluShape, which is a canvas backed with a very thin metal, which sort of results in, as you scrunch it and you unscrunch it, it retains the shape and it really looks like a rock. So we covered the entire set with it and then painted it, and it's just, I felt it looked stunning. With Keli, we've aimed at intermediate level of Green Book. So Green Book is this initiative in Britain where we aim at having sustainable sourced materials as new materials, and we aim at reuse and recycle as many set elements as we can to reduce the waste produced by the theatre. It sort of trickles down to all different departments in a different way. Like, for example, in costume, we try to get as many things as we can from Vinted and eBay and High Street, and hopefully not to buy new, more kind of rethink something, find dead stock fabrics, make things out of them. And with set elements, it means that as well trying to find materials that's been used before, like for example, we had red curtains. They came from a different show and they were remade for us. To add to this, if we look at the set in Keli, the columns, which we call girders, which are actually H-beams, they came from reset scenery. There's 5 of them. We've repainted, we've adapted them, we've used them, so that wasn't a new build. I think most of the wood came from old flats. NTS have a very big stock of old flats, which they kind of reskin and, you know, clear out for to be used for different shows, to repurpose. So yeah, I think our goal was 75% to begin with of all the elements from all the departments. But I believe we actually very quickly exceeded that. And I'm not 100% sure where it stands now, but I think definitely over 80%. I'm pretty sure of that. And now thinking there isn't really one main element which was not reused, and that came into our like a 20-odd% was the AluShape material. However, the material itself is very durable. It's got aluminium metal backing and it's easily repainted and it's easily stripped and stored. So that material was bought with the thought that it's a very interesting scenic fabric. It's bound to be reused again. It will be reused again. Let's buy this and let's add it to stock of the National Theatre of Scotland to have a future life, because yeah, unfortunately that didn't have a previous life. However, to get to that point, we've also looked at all of the different ways we could achieve the similar finish without buying new. And then after crunching percentages and, you know, just time and everything, and also the overlook of the show, we've decided that it would be best to just go with that. But pretty much everything else is recycled. Like, for example, also bar. We have a bar on wheels, that as well. And Pretty Scenic has reskinned it, added different elements, and they made it bigger, put it on wheels, made it a compartment. So yeah. It's actually wonderful. It's a great idea of not really investing in anything new, but investing in people. Designing a tourable set of that scale was a bit tricky. Specifically, the range of venues we went to on tour was quite large. So from Perth Theatre, which is quite small and raked, to, you know, Dundee, which is very wide and has got a completely different setting. We've got audience starting on the ground and going up, and, you know, at the Lyceum and at Perth we have a lip, we have actually a stage, so it's a very different feel of the space, different sizes, to tramway, where the main challenge of it is that we can't fly anything. There's no rig. Tramway is a big disused kind of a tramway barn, and there isn't, it's not a theatre, and we have to bring the theatre to the space. So every single venue had a different set of challenges around it, and also everything needs to fit in a truck, fit in a van, in a lorry. And my conversations with P. Fraser, the production manager, helped for me to understand a lot of practical issues, because, you know, she has a first-hand knowledge, and maybe I've never packed a truck myself, but, you know, she has, and I have a sort of a rough idea of what I could fit there, but, you know, she could really tell me, okay, that's a bit too much, and yeah, you have some space. We knew from the get-go that the set needs to be quite light, kind of portable. When we've landed on our design, which is basically, we've got a backdrop, we've got some tourable flats, we've got flats on wheels, and we've got some hung pieces. So once we got that, I felt quite safe to go into different size venues, because Brian and I had a chat, and we realized that we can always kind of scale it, bring it in, take it out a little bit, you know. At the end, we have fixed kind of the height and the width of the stage, roughly. When we could set a certain width and a height, we did that, and we based it on a sort of Lyceum and the dimensions of the Lyceum, and then that traveled to Dundee and that traveled to McRobert. From the very start, Brian and I had a conversation about costumes being quite precise and quite characterful, which was easier in some cases. Like, for example, we always knew what Keli would wear, but for example with Mum, we sort of had an idea of what she should be, and then when we started rehearsing, we had Mum's fitting, and we've realized that we can't quite fit the elements together, because she needs to be a very specific character. She's somebody who's in her mid-30s, she's a mother, she's had a difficult life, and well, she enjoys emo and goth music, and she's sort of a very subculture heavy person. So it was difficult to pinpoint the specific elements that would end up in her outfit, and at the end, after lots of trials and errors, we ended up with a 9-inch nail t-shirt and slim black trousers that fitted very well, and we've asked Karen Fishwick to also straighten her hair, which we felt was quite useful for her character's mum. So every costume we tried to fit in a lot of references. So for example, Willie Knox, he's not really alive, he's not really a ghost, he's not a zombie, he's just kind of a presence. And it was very important for his costume to be of that era, and also present him in a special way. So he's kind of an old socialist, very, very well dressed, sort of nothing too flashy, but modest and proud. It was wonderful to do fittings with actor Billy. He himself carries the role so well, and it was great to try and fitting, you know, is this tie is a good fit, and we ended up with a very lovely knitted tie for him, which was a very interesting choice. So yeah, so every costume we tried to kind of make own unique world. And in terms of Keli, that was a big conversation with Martin from the get-go, because for Martin it was always very, very important that Keli's costume would get dramatically worse and worse and worse and worse from the top of the show towards the end of the show. She doesn't quite sleep, she doesn't quite eat very well, and she kind of runs around in this mad circle of life, from the rehearsal to work to Mum to, you know, she goes to London, and it's all, she just wears this uniform, and it needs to get progressively worse and worse. And there was a big conversation before we started rehearsing about how we approach this. In a place such as Keli, there is no really any poses for Keli to go off stage. There's something needs to happen to her costume, or something happens to her costume on stage. So we kind of had to opt out to her always being in her end piece, so her being quite disheveled, quite broken down, already sort of at the end of the 10-day strike, you know, through mud and going down the mine and clubbing and getting some glitter and all of that and getting some blood on. That's where we meet Keli in the costume way, and that was a conversation with Martin and Bryony, just to kind of talk about, okay, what would be the best And at first, we also thought that maybe we'll add some stages. There will be stages of Keli's being, you know, she would have a new jacket and then we would dishevel it at 2 points. But then in the end, it's the massive sort of a speedy train of a track for a Liberty Black as Keli. And we just felt that it would be better to simplify it a little bit, make it a bit easier for her, because she really, really drives that show with her bare hands. And talking about the different brass bands, so we had the pleasure of having 2 brass bands play live with us for the Keli tour. It was the Kingdom Brass and it was the Whitburn Brass Band. And both of them have very different uniforms. And because each band goes on stage at the end of the show, and there needs to be a sense of unity, and there needs to be a sense of unity specifically between Keli and the band, because this is when everything she's talking about is sort of realized around her and, you know, swells up to this wonderful just wall of sound. So it was important for us to mirror her outfit and the outfits, so her jacket and the jacket of the 4 band members, to what the band will be with us on that night. So yeah, Whitburn have burgundy jackets and Kingdom have like a lovely, lovely purple embellished jacket. So yeah, Keli and the musicians on stage had 2 different sets of costumes. And that was really fun to see that development. And then we have a little distinction. So we have a brass band on stage, obviously just in their own jackets. And then we have musicians on stage. That includes Louis, the musical director, and the rest of the live band. For them, we had a bass jacket of each brass band, but then we also added little bits and pieces to them to kind of make them feel a bit more cooler. Add a bit more bite to them a bit fun and a bit rock, but not too rock. So yeah, so they, like all of them had, like for example, giant lapels, yeah, just different buttons and embellishment and all of that, which was really fun to put on a mannequin and then, you know, see how it all comes together. What we see on stage is sort of abstract realization of mine. We've got a backdrop, we've got several hung pieces. It all sort of, I've tried to make a little bit of puzzle of it, so it's not quite all together, but there's elements which are hung at different depths to give us like a sense of distance. We've got pieces of the coal faces that are traveling in and out, which are basically flats on wheels. Because then once Keli falls down the mine, she meets this old person who ends up being Willie Knox, 137 years old. She tells him, oh, I've been there. And as she describes, we bring props and little trucks and little pieces of scenery to kind of bring those images to life. As part of the set, we had several ladders. We had one grand, kind of a piece of the staircase on wheels that traveled in and out of the stage. And that was our staircase and also a big window. Those 2 elements have brought to life the mansion, the disused mansion, the Snaresbrook home. We also had an industrial ladder, which was our sort of a placeholder for the tower, the place where Keli goes to practice, and that was used in that way. Also, we bring it for the club, because it's quite a versatile element to play with for cast and for Bryony, just for a bit of a height and a bit of a fun with movement. We had also, because the show was underscored completely, the entire show is scored with live music. Our musical director on set, Louis, he had a little platform which I've designed to be like a coal truck, and that traveled in and out of the stage, and that had all of his instruments and all of his pedals and wires and everything. That was a design solution to solve how are we gonna fit Louis on stage with all his gear and, you know, make it look cohesive with the rest of the design. So yeah, and then to add to that, we have lots of little elements, like for example, when there's a town gala, we bring flowers that we put on our coal faces, flats. We've got a little bunting that goes up. So yeah, just those like little elements. So it's really the flavor of each location that we've been trying to give the audience with props and additional pieces of scenery without going very much precise into, okay, if we are at home, we need all of those things. But yeah, I think personally I was very excited to do Lyceum and to see the set in Lyceum, because it was my first show at the venue. And it's just, for me personally, it's a beautiful theatre, it's a beautiful prose arch, and the auditorium is excellent. And it felt quite dear to see it there. And I was very happy that we opened at the Lyceum.